All right, class. So this week we're going to talk about the concept of break-even analysis and even get into a little bit of profit. So first thing to say about break-even analysis, as I said in that little write-up in Canvas, is it's something that many small business owners and corporations, even though it's so simple, they don't understand it. And all it is we just want to know how many units we need to sell in order to break even. Is that even an attainable goal? If not, it's not a venture we should go down. Or if it's easily attainable, how many more than the break even can we hit in order to make a good profit? So the video I'm going to give you to kind of teach these points in this process, we're going to talk about, let's just assume that you or I have a couple kids who want to start a lemonade stand. So you or I were going to be a good parent or a good uncle, aunt, mentor, whatever it is, and just say, all right, look, we need you to break even on this. We're not going to lose money on your lemonade stand. It's just not acceptable. And so as we go through that process, we want to talk to these kids about, okay, here are the things you need to do to make sure that happens. So the first thing we do, let's assume that the kids, they need to buy something in order to sell the lemonade. And we've got two types of costs. We've got our fixed cost. We've got our variable cost. All right, so just talking about those two, when we think about fixed costs of an organization, it's something we have to pay, and it doesn't change based on anything. So that could be your rent if it's your organization. For our lemonade stand, we have a couple fixed costs. For example, we might make the kids go and buy a stand. They would also need to perhaps buy a pitcher of some sort, a stirring spoon, a sign, a marker in order to say we're selling lemonade. These are one-time costs we don't have to worry about after we purchase them. So we're going to just assume that's 20 bucks. We'll change that to $1. All right, so variable costs. Variable costs are pretty simple with lemonade or with most things. For lemonade, we would probably say it's the cup that we put it in, as well as the material or the mixture or the lemons that goes into each cup. Now we're going to have our kids sell a premium product, so we're going to say that's 60 cents. All right, then the price, we're going to go at $1.50 just because we are sales professionals and we can teach our kids how to sell at a higher price. We're not going to go the cheap dollar that some kids go. All right, so that's our information we need to know. That's all we need to do for a break even. So whenever you're setting up your own for any example, that's all you have to break down. What are we going to sell it for? What are the variable costs or the costs we need for each unit to be produced? And what are the fixed costs we need in order to run the operation? So we'll come over here. We'll merge and center two of these cells. We'll call it break even. All right, so we need to know units. And then we need to do a profit formula. So that's going to be our revenue, our cost, and our profit. So if you remember, if you had another class, that's great. If not, the way we find profit, we take our total revenue. Revenue is another word for how much we sell. We minus our cost, or all of our expenses we have, and that gives us our profit. So units are what we're trying to figure out. Now we just need to put in the other formulas to figure this out. So for revenue, it's going to equal, remember revenue is how much we sell, so it's our price times the number of units we sell, and that is E2. Okay, so you can see the formula there again. It's price times units. So cost is going to equal our fixed costs. Remember, we just need to do that one time, so then we go plus our variable cost times the number of units we produce. So order of operations here, we do not need a parenthesis because it's going to do the times before the add. If you wanted to add it around the B2 and E2, that would be fine as well. There's no difference. But once again, we have this fixed cost just one time, and then we add our variable costs times the number of units that we sell. And then for our profit, it's going to equal our revenue minus our cost, which is E4. All right, so right now it's saying it's negative 20. If you don't know, those parentheses means negative in Excel sometimes. Sometimes it'll come out red. Sometimes we'll get the negative sign based on what version of Excel you have. All right, so now kind of the fun part for break-even analysis. There's a really cool tool in Excel that will help us figure that out. So we go to Data, and we go to What If Analysis, and we do Goal Seek. All right, so what Goal Seek does, for those of you who've used Solver, it's very similar to Solver. It's just a simpler way to do it. We'll use Solver later in the semester, but it just grabs a cell and changes all other cells to make that cell that you grabbed what you want to make it. So for example, we want to make our profit, which is cell E5, we click on it, to a value of 0. Why 0? Because that's break even. And then what do we want it to change? We want it to change the units that we're selling, which is this cell right here. So then we hit OK, and you can see it go into work, and it changed this revenue cost, these formulas we put in, to give us 22. You have to round it up to 23 units. So we know that our kids in this scenario in the lemonade stand would have to sell 23 units of lemonade to break even. So now let's just clean this up a little bit. Let's go home. Let's throw some borders on this. Give it a little color as well. Fill color. Just something short green today. All right. And then let's get rid of our grid lines as well. Okay, so if the question was how many units do they need to break even, we would answer right here. They need to sell 23 units of product, lemonade, whatever you want to say, to break even. And then what you also want to do is, let's go ahead and highlight this whole thing. Control C. If you're on a Mac, I believe it's Command C, copy. And then you come down here, I right click, and I'm going to do paste. And in case you didn't see that, if I highlight this whole thing, if I right click, I can also copy it that way as well. Come down here, I do a paste special, and I want to go to the picture. The reason why I want to do picture, if I just paste in the values, when I go back here in a second and change more things over here, it will change my values down here. So if I do a picture, it will forever show that picture. So if you can't find the picture, or you don't have the picture in your version of Excel, you can always do just the values or the numbers. Let's see, values and number formatting, and then you just make it look pretty again. That way it only brings over the numbers and not the formulas. But I'm going to do the picture. We're going to make it go a little bigger. Okay, so they need to sell 23 units of product to break even on their lemonade stand. All right, so clearly that's not enough. We want our kids, or these children we're mentoring with their lemonade stand, to make some money. And so the way we do that, let's just say, okay, your goal needs to be, you need to make 50 bucks. If that's true, how many units do you need to sell? So let's go back to our goal seek, what if analysis goal seek, and we're still going to set profit, but now we want to set it to 50 bucks by changing units. So we hit OK. The magic happens, and we need to sell 78 units to make 50 bucks. And then the same thing, I'm going to go ahead and go grab this whole thing, Control C on a PC, come down here, right click, paste special, do the picture. Okay, All right, next thing we might want to know, and I'm going to add this. So that's the two basic things of break-even analysis. First, what do we need to sell to break even? And then what do we need to sell in order to make a profit of any amount, and it will figure that out for us. Now let's just assume for a second that we wanted to figure out profit per unit. In other words, if we sell 100 units and we make $100 and we're making $1 per unit, that can be important to know how much we're making on each thing we sell on different levels. So the way we do that, we're going to come here and add per unit. Now, if you didn't have enough room here, let's say you would put this right here, you can always right click here and go insert, and it will add another row for you. So we'll just use that one. We'll call this per unit. And the way we get profit per unit, it's going to equal our total profit divided by our units. So right now we're making 64 cents per unit. Let's grab that and put it back together. All right, so let's just assume that we want to see how many units we need to sell to make 75 cents per unit. Let's go there. So now we go back up to data, what if analysis, and goal seek. And now instead of setting our profit to a value, we're going to set our per unit, which is this one right here, to 75 cents by changing our units. So it's 133. So we need to sell, now is it 133 or 134? 134, we got to round up. 134 units to make 75 cents per unit. All right, and then same thing, we can copy and paste it. All right, so last thing we'll go through. Let's just assume for a second that we get a little bit more bold and say, all right, we want to make a whole dollar per unit. And let's say that that was the next question. How many units do you need to sell to make $1 per unit? So in order to do that, we're going to go back into goal seek, what if analysis and goal seek. We're going to set our per unit to $1 by changing cells. Our units, hit OK. All right, look at what this thing's doing right here. So what goal seek's doing, it's searching for just tons of solutions to try to make it work. And it didn't. So we're going to hit OK. And you can see that number, 9 point whatever, and that's the decimal place moved over 17 places. So really that's a really big number. You see the total revenue, and it didn't get to $1 per unit. It got to 90 cents per unit, or very close to 90 cents per unit. So in other words, it broke. Why did we break it? All right, so this is where we need to go back and understand what we're asking. We can't ever get to $1 per unit. Why? Our price is $1.50, and our variable cost is only 60 cents or 60 cents. So what does that mean? We can never get to $1 because there's not a dollar difference between those two things. In fact, we can't even, in theory, really even ever get to 90 cents a unit because we have to make this up. We would get very close, obviously, as we grew to infinity, but we would never get there. And so it's just a way to help us understand, okay, what are we really doing here? We can't get to $1 because there's not enough margin between these two numbers. All right, so what else to tell you about break-even analysis? There's going to be a question on the assignment that breaks down just like that and you'll just have to answer. So if I was going to answer that now, I'd come down here. I'd say, we can't make $1 per unit because there is only 90 cents difference between the variable cost and price. And that's how you would answer that question. So that's break-even analysis. This is a pretty simple example, but you can use this example to learn and go through anything you need to for this class and many of the scenarios you'll have in your own business or the organizations where you're employed.